On the remote settlement of Zenovis IV2, an unwritten rule prevailed. Never approach the dens of the Felars after nightfall. Lara Kaiden, a human, had broken that rule 3 months ago, and it had saved her life. Now, as the frost-covered trees of the crystalline forest glittered under the moonlight, she sat by a flickering fire inside the den of Grom, the leader of the Felars. Grom's 3 cubs tumbled across the stone floor, their wolf-like bodies now the size of full-grown humans. Their father had gone hunting at sunset and entrusted Lara, a human, with their care. To most, this would be a strange arrangement, even absurd. But Lara had earned the Felars' trust in a way that others could not. Lara had come to this strange world years ago after her crash landing. She had been forced to learn the language of the Felars, growls and gestures that communicated more than words ever could. She proved herself when she healed Grom's mate before she succumbed to an infection, an act that solidified her place in their pack. Most settlers feared the Felars, massive, intelligent, and territorial apex predators, but Lara had earned their respect. The cubs' growls softened as they settled down to sleep, their glowing eyes dimming with exhaustion. Lara, exhausted herself, pulled her thermal blanket tighter around her and exhaled a cloud of steam in the chilly air. Grom had made it clear that weapons were not allowed inside the den. Trust was everything here. Without it, there was nothing. Just as the cubs' breathing grew steady, Lara's chrono beeped. It was 12:17 a.m. The sharp scratching noise came again, deliberate, too purposeful to be the wind. Her head snapped up, the cubs' ears twitched, and their yellow eyes flared open, filled with sudden alertness. Lara's heart pounded as the entrance to the den exploded with the sound of boots and heavy breathing. 4 figures in tactical gear stormed inside, plasma rifles raised. Lara recognized the insignia immediately, the poachers of Turin. These traders specialized in the black market, dealing in Felar hides and cubs across the galaxy. 3 of the poachers were teenagers, with one clearly in charge, a seasoned leader. This was a raid. Lara's protective instincts flared. She stepped forward, positioning herself between the poachers and the cubs. "Leave," she said, her voice calm, but firm. The leader of the poachers, a scarred man with cold eyes, sneered. A human playing mother to these monsters. He raised his rifle. "Move aside, or we put you down with them." Lara stood her ground. She spoke again, her voice now shaking with the weight of her words. "They're inexperienced. They won't survive against armed adults." The poacher gave a cruel laugh. "Last warning, human," he growled. In that moment, Lara acted without thinking. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and hurled it into the poacher's face. Chaos erupted instantly. The poacher recoiled, cursing, and Lara charged. Her training was minimal, just basic colony defense. But she had something they didn't, the burning desire to protect what she had come to consider her family. She collided with the nearest poacher, knocking him to the ground. The rifle slipped from his grasp. Lara grabbed it, but the biometric lock rendered it useless. A sharp kick sent her crashing against the stone floor, the air knocked out of her lungs. Her vision blurred as the cubs let out terrified growls. They leaped forward, their claws flashing in the dim light, but their moves were wild, uncoordinated. One poacher fired a shock net, sending a crackling electric web around the youngest cub. The cub screamed, trapped in the net. "No!" Lara cried out. She lunged for a loose stone and hurled it at the poacher's helmet. Seconds later, she crawled toward the cub, burning her hands as she tore at the electric net. A blow to her shoulder sent her tumbling backward, her vision fading in and out. But then came the roar, the deep, resonating sound that shook the very walls of the den. Grom had returned. The massive leader Felar stood in the entrance, his eyes burning like twin fires. His silver-black fur bristled, and his jaws were stained with the blood of his hunt. He surveyed the situation with terrifying clarity. The cubs were in danger, and his human pack member was hurt. The poacher holding the rifle didn't even finish his threat. In a flash, Grom was upon him, his claws tearing through the poacher's armor with frightening ease. The leader's jaws clamped around the poacher's neck and tossed her aside like a rag doll. The remaining poachers fired plasma bolts, but Grom was already moving. In the blink of an eye, he was on them, his claws slashing through armor like it was paper. One poacher attempted to flee, but Grom's weight crushed him with terrifying force. Lara could only watch in awe and relief as the cubs joined the battle, biting and clawing at the poachers. Within moments, it was over. 4 armed men lay destroyed, their lives snuffed out in seconds by the fury of Grom's wrath. Grom stood among the bodies, breathing heavily, his eyes scanning the area. When he was sure the threat had passed, he turned his gaze to the cubs, then to Lara. She was still on the ground, blooded, exhausted. She had fought for them, using her human fragility against the poachers. She had bled for them. Grom approached her, his massive form looming over her. His warm breath washed over her face, and then, gently, surprisingly so for such a deadly creature, he touched his forehead to hers. It was a sign of deep respect, a mark of true pack membership. Lara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," she whispered, the words heavy in the quiet aftermath. Grom's reply resonated deep in her bones. "You did everything." As dawn's first light began to filter through the den, Lara sat with the cubs, their warm bodies pressed against her. Grom stood watch at the entrance, guarding them all. The bodies of the poachers would be disposed of, thrown far from the den, a warning to anyone who dared approach. The settlers might never understand. They would question why Lara chose to stay among creatures so terrifying, risking her life for beings that weren't even of her species. But as the youngest cub curled in her lap, purring in satisfaction at the safety she had provided, Lara realized that family isn't defined by species or DNA. Family is those you are willing to fight for.